Happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Eat, Train, Prosper. Today we have a very special guest and very special friend on the podcast by the name of Jenn Ryan. I'm going to have Jenn introduce herself quick, and then we're going to jump into our weekly updates.
Hey, so happy to be here. So I'm Jenn Ryan. I am a nurse. I'm a health and wellness nutrition coach, and I am a CrossFit athlete, I guess you could call me. I have a hard time calling myself an athlete still, but I suppose many people still know me for that.
It's probably time just to accept that you're an athlete.
I don't know. Well, yes, maybe.
Maybe. And Bryan, do you want to kick us off with the updates?
Yeah, for sure. Before we get into updates, though, everybody should know that we have a bit of a history with Jenn Ryan. And she was a coach at the gym that Aaron attended and that I owned for many years. She was an athlete for us, and she's only gotten better over time. So this episode is super cool for all of us to be able to reconnect, but also for the world to be able to learn about Jenn in our audience, which now has actually transitioned to a bit of a different audience than where we were when we were working together. So that's all super cool. And I know you'll have some context to add in there as well, Straker. So I didn't want to steal the fire there, but you didn't even mention that in the intro that we all know each other. So I think it's important that everybody know that, you know.
It is important to know that. And I will kind of take over really quickly with that introduction. Jenn Ryan was my introduction into the nutrition space and nutrition coaching space. So there are a few people, right? And obviously Bryan is one, right? I've talked about this on the podcast a few times, people who were like instrumental in what my life has turned into. And Jenn Ryan is probably the biggest, to be completely honest. Without Jenn, there would be no Straker Nutrition Company. There would be no Eat, Train, Prosper. And before we get started, I guess, Jenn, I just want to extend how grateful I am for your friendship and everything you taught me and still continue to do. And I'm just very, very appreciative.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome. You're going to make this old lady cry.
I think, didn't you cry on Barbell Shrugged when you were on there as well?
Yeah, I did. Amazing. There's just so many cool emotions. And you don't think about, like, even in my introduction, it's like, I don't know how to introduce myself. And I don't know, like, I'm not sure exactly. I'm feel like I'm so many things, but I don't know what I actually identify as. And so I think being able to identify as someone who's just hopefully had an impact on people is super cool. And like, when I hear you say that, Aaron, it's really cool. And like, when like teammates of mine or other athletes at the gym say that, it's like, it's cool because you don't know if everything that you're doing, and I get emotional. But it makes me happy for other people, I think, is like the craziest thing to know that, like, you don't know exactly what you're doing, but knowing that you're having like impact on people's lives is just really freaking cool. It's like fucking amazing. So that's why I get emotional. It's not like about you saying that about me. It's just, I hear that from people, and it's cool to know where people, like, how you're affecting people when you're not sure you are, you know? So, so that's all I'm going to do to get like teary eyed, because it just makes me really happy that other people are just getting to do what they love to do in their life, and finding it so early on is super cool.
Hell yeah. Well, that's okay. All truth. So I love that. Last 7 days, guys. I just got back from Mexico yesterday. It was an okay trip.
What?
Well, so I if you guys followed my stories, you would have seen, hashtags like relocation, not vacation, things like that. So it's really just the way it is with kids. And you try to keep a positive perspective, and you realize that, you're still going to be caring for kids, and you don't have the amenities that you have at home. You don't have childcare really. You're just in this like crazy new place, and they're 4 and they're 2, and they just want to go explore everything, and, always run in the sand and throw sand and run away and try to drown themselves in the ocean. And like, this is just what you deal with when you go on vacation with a 4 and a 2-year-old. So it wasn't relaxing at all. It was actually extremely stressful. And now I'm back from not vacation, and and my son's school is closed for the week because 6 kids and 3 teachers have COVID. So right back into the fire. Here I am, but it's all good. And I have no complaints. Like, we're here. I'm just happy to be in my own bed again and have our structure back in some ways. And I even got to train quads this morning. Gonna have to hit upper body later, but at least I got half of it done. And now we get to talk to Jenn Ryan. So it's all good things here.
I'll give my quick update and then we'll jump into Jen. So I really don't have much of an update. I had COVID. So what's funny is last week on the podcast when we were recording with Mike, I'm sitting here and I'm like, I kind of just feel different, and I was like, maybe it's like a little headache, and it sounds really, really like stupid of me, but like I feel good so often, I kind of forget what it's like to not. And I'm in here and I'm like, is that a headache? Like, why? I just kind of feel weird. And then like an hour or two later, it hit me. I'm like, oh, Aaron, like you're getting sick. And it's just been so long, you forgot what that felt like as it was coming on. And then by like, Tuesday evening, I was in full blown on the couch, like ready to die type of thing. And then, I've been sick with COVID since last Tuesday. And then it was until about Saturday I started feeling better. And now I'm just literally in my quarantine period post until I can go outside and go to the gym and stuff like that and running out of food. And then other than that, the other last little strange thing is my weight continues to drop day over day. Even though I've now had Saturday, Sunday, Monday of full days of eating, my weight continues to slide. And I was 187.3 this morning.
You hate seeing below 190?
No, I literally haven't weighed this little since you guys did that nutrition challenge at the gym, and I sandbagged it because I wanted to weigh more, right?
I remember that. Yeah, you gained 13 pounds in a couple days, right?
I remember that. Oh my God.
It's been literally 9-10 years since I've weighed this little.
Oh, wow.
And it's crazy to me. And I was like, I don't know. I'm just going to wait it out and then see and just continue to eat. My appetite and stuff's back, but it's just strange that it continues to slide. So, we kind of talked about previously, who knows? COVID's just weird and your body does weird things.
For sure.
That's it.
That's it. I just had COVID. No big deal.
Yeah. What are your 7 days like this past week? You were at Wadapalooza?
Yes. So last 7 days, high stress, which is not something I enjoy anymore. High stress, low sleep. So last Tuesday, I left for Miami to go to Wadapalooza, got in there at 10:45 at night, which 3-hour difference. It's only 7:45 here in San Diego, but still, it's really tiring. You know what I realized, and I don't know if you guys have as well. I'm sure you have. So I left San Diego at 1 o'clock, but you get to the airport at 11:30, 11:45. So you're inside for that long, right? I didn't get back outside again until, let's see, I had to go through the Miami airport, get my rental car. I probably did not walk outside again until 11:30 at night.
12 hours.
And I used to notice this when I worked my 12.5-hour shifts in the ER too, where you're just inside so much with that artificial light. It makes me so groggy. And then especially on a plane, same thing. I just felt so groggy and I hate that feeling of those long flights like that, right? So anyhow, so then yes, I competed at Wadapalooza on an elite team of 3 with 2 wonderful young women in the sport. One is 19 and the other one is 26. So for those of you who don't know listening, I'm 42. And I was definitely the oldest female out there. I believe there's one other woman who's actually in my master's category who I think is a year younger than me. Anyhow, so out there on that elite team of 3, trying to hang with the young kids is tough. But it was really great. We had 2 events each day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The way Wadapalooza does it, of course, because you're in downtown Miami on the bay, and they have so many different categories going that it is a very long day. A briefing at 10:30 or 11:30. Then your first event is a couple hours later. And your last event, 2 of the nights, I think we went at 8 p.m. So then you're finishing, watching the next heat, and then you're getting back. We got back to the Airbnb sometimes at 9 and 9:30. So like 6 nights in a row of not going to bed till between 11 and 1 a.m. I usually like to get to bed between 9:30 and 10 and sleep a solid 8.5 to 9 hours. So yes, at least we did get to sleep in, but like you guys know, like our bodies are on these certain clocks, right? And so, you know, in the Airbnbs, you know, they just have like the white blinds. So the sun comes through anyways. And when your body sees that light, it's like, I'm ready to wake up. So I kind of was feeling like garbage yesterday. And then even this morning I got up and I was like, I'm going to need about 3 more nights of recovery.
Yeah, it doesn't happen as quickly as it did in your 20s, huh?
No, for sure. And my body's not even beat up. I didn't feel like the workouts like beat you up. It's just the schedule, right? Such a schedule change. So yeah, it's been my last 7 days. So
how'd you guys do?
We finished 8th overall. I think there was 38 to 40 teams in the elite team of 3. So
nice.
Yeah, it was great. We had a good time. Lots of learning experiences as always.
Yeah, for sure. Was this like, so I remember it was in maybe a couple years ago in CrossFit or something, they had some sort of event where I think it was 2 or 3 non-masters and then you had to have like a masters on the team. Do you remember anything like?
Remember, it was grid league.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
So this wasn't that way. You were actually competing like because you were just that good.
Yeah. Well, so we were very blessed. My team, in the Invictus team, we won the West Coast Classic, the semifinal, to qualify us to games. And so if you want us, Wodapalooza does do a qualifier to get you into the elite team of 3, but you also they also invite some teams. So they invite individuals and then they'll invite some teams. So they invited the top 10 teams from the games, but we finished 19th only because I had a displaced fracture of my hand from someone who pushed me into a guardrail at West Coast Classic, where we still went on, where I competed in 4 more events and we still took first place. So you can't hold the old lady down. But anyways, I feel we would have been top 10. But anyhow, you can't say that. So anyhow, but because we won West Coast Classic, we got an invite. So you don't want to like go in there and be like, oh, we shouldn't have invited you. And so I felt that we held our own, even though we didn't have to do the qualifier, which was nice because I was still coming back, like rehabbing, right? Like getting myself back because I wanted to take time off after the games, and we can talk about recovery and things like that later. But I was like, oh, I don't want to have to do these qualifiers, but we were very blessed since we won to get the invite. And so Britt Weiss was like, hey, you want to do this team with me? And so I was like, okay, I will.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool.
I think that's a perfect segue kind of into what I wanted to talk about first, Jen, with you specifically, is kind of longevity. And longevity in the sport of CrossFit, right? So that's like the real part of the conversation I want to have, but obviously it'll apply to a little bit more broader of a scope. Mm-hmm. And I want to also make sure we cover like some maybe myths with that, and then some truths. And what I think is really, really cool, and I want to kind of preface this for the listeners because I know what you will pick up on from what Jen has said already is Jen will not talk she will like downplay herself, that she's like not quite as badass as she really, really is. And I really just kind of want to reiterate or kind of put out the point that like Jen is you're still setting PRs, you're still setting strength PRs, you're still actively getting better after. Like, how long have you been doing CrossFit, Jen?
I started in June of 2009.
So we're on 13 years, right? Or 11 years?
I think so. Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so somewhere like 11 to 13 years, something like that. But you're still you just set a back squat PR a couple months ago, did you not?
Yeah, I did. Yes.
Okay. You were 41
and a front squat PR.
Now.
And,
okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to talk about, right? Multiple trips to the games in recent years, and still continuing to get better. So just like take us through some of your things for longevity, and then some of the myths and truths that you have found that people sometimes mix up with longevity.
Yeah, longevity. I think it's so important to understand that even though the sport is getting more and more competitive, and I think this is with probably any type of sport that you try to get into, you still have to give your body time to recover no matter what age you're at. If you want to make sure that you can mitigate injuries and nagging like aches and pains, right? They're going to happen in sport. And even if you're someone who is training for aesthetics or anything, no matter what sport you're doing, things are going to happen to you, right? We can't just eliminate aches and pains and maybe injuries because being active no matter what could, you're breaking down the body no matter what, right? Every form of exercise, you're breaking down the body. And if you're not allowing yourself adequate time to recover, it's going to catch up with you no matter what age you're at. And this does start to happen as you get older. So one of the big blessings, I suppose, for me was that I have almost always had a job as a nurse. And so I would work 12 and a half hour shifts in the ER for a majority of the last 12 years. Sorry, my dog's crazy. For the majority of the last, 12 or 13 years, I was working as a nurse in the ER. There were a couple periods of time where I worked less shifts, but for the most part, I worked at least 2 shifts in the ER a week, sometimes 3. So I had to take rest days. I would see so many times of people posting that they had to go into the gym on day 6 or day 7 because, hey, team, no days off, right? But I firmly believe that my longevity in the sport and mentally and physically is because I actually was forced to just have to take days off. And that has been really helpful. It really, of course, walking around the ER for that long maybe wasn't off, but I wasn't clanging and banging on my body, right? Like running it down. So that's a big piece of it for longevity, is just knowing that no matter what you're doing, all forms of exercise are essentially breaking your body down, right? So you have to allow the body to build back up. That was a big part of it. Another piece of longevity would be that, keeping stressors down. And I have to make it known that, I don't have kids, right? So I don't have the added stressor of children and someone else's schedule. So it is a big piece of it because I'm able to mitigate stress in that way. And I do think that has helped play a role in my longevity because I am able to mostly focus on myself. But I've certainly been able to work with many people who have, 1, 2, 3, 4 kids, and they are able to manage this. But I think it has to be put out there that I'm not going to overlook that and say that that's been a piece of it for me, right? Another piece of longevity is that I can't tell you the last time I tried to diet. Again, there's so many people in the sport that tried to look a certain way while doing CrossFit and performing at a high level and training 5, 6, even 7 days a week, 2 times a day. And it's really hard when you see people in the way that they look not to want to look like that, and you think you have to diet down. And this has changed over the past few years, but like we've already mentioned, I've been in it for a long time, and I know so often back from when I started all the way through, 15, 16, 17, people were eating so little and training so much that people got burnt out, right? And so, I was very blessed to, in I think 2015, to start working with someone who immediately, helped me learn how to train for performance. And being a smaller athlete anyways, I always wanted to get stronger and bigger. So for me, it was never really about dieting or under eating. It was like, I need to eat more all the time. And I'll be honest, that's probably another big part of my longevity and recovery is that, my body composition has surely changed. It's taken a long time. I was never always the leanest athlete, but over the years, I've put on a lot of muscle, a lot of size, but my weights, when I started CrossFit in 2009, I was 115 pounds. And by the time I came out to CrossFit PB in December of 2012, I was 135. I never got any bigger than that. And I'm currently like 127 to 130 is where I fluctuate to. But because I never really dieted, I had slow body composition changes. And I was okay with that. I wasn't okay with it, but I had to be. I think that played a huge role in my longevity, is that I was eating like some of the males in the sport, you know?
And I wanted to, I'm glad you just said that, because I wanted to input that. Like, Jenn just shared her size, right? How tall are you, Jenn? 5'3"?
5'2".
5'2", 5'3". Okay. I'm 5'11". I'm generally around 192, 193 pounds. Not this week, but Jenn and I will compare food, and Jenn generally is eating, if not more, at least the same amount of food that I eat, even though I'm literally obviously much, much larger than her, but her training schedule is so demanding. The volume, the frequency, like, it is a very, very big part of it. Jenn could put her numbers into any fucking nutrition calculator in the world, and it would massively underserve what she should be eating and what she currently is eating to perform like that. And I really just wanted to make sure we stress that to people out there listening who do follow, intense CrossFit training.
Yeah, I think that is probably, that and stress mitigation, is one of the biggest parts of the longevity piece. So, because it keeps you mentally going too, right? It tires your body out to be training so much and then not having that fuel come in and not seeing and feeling the performances in the gym change. And if you are, you're operating on your own body's like cortisol and everything it's pumping out, and that starts to plummet at a certain point for people, if you're not giving it fuel. So that's a huge piece.
Those are great perspectives. I love that you started with the days off one, because I feel like that really is like the most important one, almost. Like the fact that the CrossFitters out there, and Aaron raised his hand during that, and I also can co-sign the same, that Aaron and I both kind of almost used exercise as a way to validate eating more food, and then we would exercise more, and then we'd eat more food and exercise more, and it was this like repetitive cycle. And it ended up being like team no days off, basically. Like we were taking Sundays off every now and then or something along those lines. So I think that that's massively important. I think you also just have like a genetic proclivity probably for resilience, partially because you're a female, but also just you as a person. Like you seem just a very resilient human, and your body is very responsive to that. You mentioned earlier 8 to 9 hours of sleep a night. So that's obviously something critical too. Is that like been the case, for a decade now, that you're just consistently getting that type of sleep?
No, so this is also really important. Remember, before I came out to CrossFit PB in December of 2012, starting in 2009, right when I started CrossFit, I had graduated nursing school. I was 29 at the time, and I started on night shift. So for the first 3.5 years before I moved out there of doing CrossFit, I was also working night shift.
I remember that. Yeah.
And boy, when I didn't re-sign a nursing contract and I came out to California, within the first week of being like a day walker, I called it, the fog and I was like, holy crap, I am a whole new human. And I started sleeping more, even though coaching hours were off a little bit, right? But my everything started to change. It was crazy. My body composition started to change. I was able to do and push a little bit harder, so performance was different, and just mood, motivation, brain fog, it all changed. Now, then when I started, back to like nursing after moving out here, I would work the 11 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. shift. So I might on some nights of the week not get the full 8 hours. I probably was maybe sometimes 6.5 to 7, depending on if I could sleep. But over time, it really became important that I was sleeping more and more. Last September, I went back to work at the hospital after being off for a year, and I had to start back to night shift. And that was really hard. That was very hard. So I was night shift for a while, and then days, and then mid shifts, and then up until this past about a month and a half, 2 months ago, when I just went back to just not working at the hospital. It was much different, and I could feel it on my body. But ever since games this past August, I really made it a point that I would get like 8.5 to 9 hours of sleep, except for maybe the nights that I was working until 11:30 p.m. but then I would really try to make myself sleep in. So it wasn't always that much, but I have felt a major difference. The differences in like lab work, the differences in the way my body felt over the last year, going back and having a disrupted sleep schedule, working nights, it made it very clear to me that I could make the decision for my health, or I could make the decision for, what do I want to do, right? And to me, I have this path, this route where I love and enjoy my health and wellness coaching, and making my own schedule, getting to bed and getting the amount of sleep I need. And that to me is, the proof was in the pudding. So I had a lot of factors determining that. And I know a lot of people don't have that. So we kind of have to remember what people have the capabilities to do. But having that choice has helped a lot in like longevity and just making things much better for me.
The circadian rhythm piece is huge. Like doing the night shift thing is just, I literally couldn't imagine. And you're a testament to, the brain fog that lifted and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's awesome. Go ahead, Aaron. I'll ask about something in a second.
Okay. So I want to start shifting the conversation to around like that 2015 timeframe, Jen, but Bryan, if you want to.
One more quick question. Can you just talk about that period that you took off after the games? Because you said you took time off after the games, and I'm really curious about that.
So this past year, so many other years, I've been to the games since 2017, and many of those years, a week later, I would be ready to go back in the gym. I remember I think it was 2017, a week later, I came back from the games, hopped into the competition class in Invictus. They were on a strength cycle. I hopped in and PR'd my deadlift. Who the fuck does that in their right mind? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then I remember like the next year, I did the same thing and jumped in, and I remember doing this interval work, and I was on the ground, and I was just like, question, like, why am I doing this to myself a week later? I just peaked. But, and so I have gradually gotten smarter. And this past year, I got really smart. I took time, mostly I was sort of forced to. I mentioned before I had a displaced fracture, like a boxer's fracture in my hand since June 18th. But I couldn't take time off to really let it heal because I was going to compete at the games. And I knew my body was worn out. I was stressed from it, from the year. And so I purposely decided, especially after getting some lab work done in late May, that I was going to get more tested again, but I knew I needed a longer off season this year just to decide what I was going to do about healing my body and like mentally, physically, emotionally, physiologically. So I took the full week after games off, which I don't think I've ever done. I went into the gym that Friday. Kristen Holta, another very an amazing individual games athlete, was in town, and she was taking the full week off. And I went to the beach with her like 3 or 4 days, and I've not ever done that, where I just literally relaxed. Didn't have a care in the world about trying to work out. I think we went into the gym that Friday and just did like a 40-minute just move through things, like to sweat. And I was like, wow, this feels nice. And then the next week, I kind of did the same thing. Like I would move. I did a little bit of bodybuilding stuff, but again, like style training. But again, I couldn't hang from a bar. I wasn't supposed to pick up a barbell. I couldn't do a lot with this hand yet because I had put it through a lot at games, so I needed to let it heal. And I understood that there was no rush, right? There's no rush anymore to heal or to compete. And get better, I needed to heal. So then I got a round of lab work done. And, this data is so important, even for people like us who are very, very in tune, we understand. But data is so important. And I got these labs back and I thought, holy shit, Jen, what have you been doing to yourself? It was not good. And for people who look at me and they say like, how do you do it? You stay in it, you're, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I am resilient, but there's a point where you can ignore things, or you can look at the data and say, I'm correlating this with what's going on, and I need to continue to let things heal. So I took longer, and I made it a point to make sure that I was going to, no matter what, get 8.5 to 9 hours of sleep a night. I was going to pull back on my gym sessions, even though I was having FOMO and I was seeing my teammates and other athletes hitting it hard to get better. I knew that I needed to take that time. So, I was very strategic about that. And, mentally and emotionally, I feel so much better having done it. It's a long season, and so that was
super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah, I think obviously from everyone who listens to this, I always speak about data and helping that or leveraging that to help make your decisions and stuff like that. And that's a perfect, example right there, that those subjectivities, those fears, those emotions pull on you. But when you have that data that's listen, the data doesn't lie, so it's one of those things where it's what you need and what you want are not always in parallel. Cool. So Jen, what I want to do is kind of shift the conversation back to that 2015, version of yourself. So you were good at CrossFit. You were, the anchor of the individual, right? The anchor of the team of the multiple times you were at regionals, with PB. But I want to kind of go to what started shifting you to be go from Jenn Ryan of 2013, 2014, 2015 into what you have become now, because there was a point, and obviously I hope you can speak to it better than I can, where you just you started making different decisions, and then your capability as an athlete really took off. And I think one thing you will talk about there that I hope is confidence as well. But like you said, you've been to the CrossFit Games now for 6 consecutive years. And if you would have asked me, in 2014, Aaron, do you think your friend Jen will go to the games for 6 years in a row? I'd be like, what? Jenn Ryan? No. Why would you think that? But here we are, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I know that this is around the time that you started working with a nutrition coach as well. And back then, in the bodybuilding world, yes, it was heard of. But in CrossFit, I don't really think there were a lot of people doing it. Even when you started talking to me about it, I was like, oh, this is a thing, that this is an avenue. So I just want to kind of take the conversation back there a little bit, and what some of the thought processes were in your mind, and then what you have done to become Jenn Ryan of today.
Yeah, thank you. You're right. Maybe not so much confidence, but just a singular goal, and the confidence in what I was doing was going to get me there no matter what. And I would stop at nothing. Okay, thanks. But I would do everything within my power to get to what I wanted. And so there wasn't a ton of balance, right? I was balancing some things, but that was it, right? My goal was to go to the CrossFit Games. And so I did. The basis started out, with a B and AV at CrossFit PB, just all the confidence that they had in me. It was very catching for me. Oh, they're confident in me. Amazing. So I need to be more confident in myself, and I'm going to put everything into this. And then I did. I started making shifts just to say, okay, what's the next thing to get me to where I want to be? The next thing was, hiring a specific a coach, right? Someone who was outside of where I was then, because I'm not someone like a coach jumper or anything like that. I like to stick with people for a while, and so I had AV and B coaching me for 13 and 14, and then I was like, okay, what's my next thing? Where's another outside look, right? Because I think that's very important as an athlete grows, and I was in that growing period. What's the next step? Where can I get a leg up, right? And so I hired Jason Leiden from out at CrossFit Milford, and so he was coaching many other CrossFit athletes. He had been in the game for a really long time, very analytical, like Bryan. And so this seemed to work really well for me. So I started with individualized coaching, And then I also hired a nutrition coach. I had heard about her, this woman. She was a sports nutritionist. I had heard about her from other CrossFit athlete, and it was really amazing. I remember talking with Bryan about it, and it was really cool. In the past, I had jumped on board with the zone type diet and paleo, which I don't know if any of the listeners are familiar with a lot of those, but you are with the zone, weighing and measuring, paying attention to quote unquote blocks. Paleo was not so much about weighing and measuring. So I would eat, 2 perfect foods bars in a day and like this massive shake that was like 1,000 calories from, it was like, remember like the banana peanut butter monkey protein?
Yeah, the Arctic monkey. Arctic monkey, yep.
I was eating so many fats to fuel a glycolytic sport, right? And I would eat carbs, but I was kind of afraid of it. So I was a higher protein, like higher fat eater, and I didn't even like know it really. And this woman in particular had me start really changing. I was eating much lower fats, but really high carbohydrate. And I was like, this is amazing. And those keys really started to change my performance and the fact that I now had specific structure. So I had structure to my day for my nutrition, which then allowed me to just focus on being the athlete. And that right there is super important, I think. I had a coach to tell me what to do in my training. I had a coach to tell me what to do in my nutrition. And I could just focus on my one singular goal. So those things really transformed me. I really felt that going into the 15 and 16 season, things were very much clicking. And, I competed at regionals in 15 and 16 as an individual. And that's when I decided that, okay, now I'm ready for the next thing. And that's been the biggest part of my story, is sticking with something for a while, trusting in the process so that I could build my confidence in that process and where I was at. So I stuck with specific nutrition. I stuck with a specific coach for programming. And then I was very confident in what I was doing there. And then I was ready to move on to the next thing to take me to the next level. And that's when I decided to, I switched gyms and started working out at a place called CrossFit Invictus, which is a very well-known, gym in the CrossFit world. And they've produced a lot of top athletes and a lot of top teams, which was a huge thing for me because I wanted to go team. And so that change right there really ignited the next thing in me, because I was constantly around athletes that were better than me and, right at that same level and had the same goals. And I think when you see yourself being able to compete with some of the people at that level, or you see where you can get to, that pushes you even farther and makes you builds your confidence up even more. Those were the key years, I think 15 through early 2017 for me.
Yeah, those it was weird because in that moment when you left for Invictus, Anders and I were obviously a little bit hurt by it, but it also coincided with just kind of the demise of Anders and I and the gym and the whole shifting of the guard type thing. So it really is it was so fortuitously timed in that the separation from you in the gym and Anders and I and all of that kind of happened simultaneously. And, in retrospect, it's easy for me to look back and just be so happy for you, because that transition to Invictus was clearly the best thing for you as an athlete, but also for your career. It helped you network with people and get in with people that could help propel your career and your business and coach you through becoming a coach online and stuff like that too. So if we can talk about that transition a little bit and how you kind of developed your business, I think that'd be cool too.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a large part of it too. I had started nutrition coaching back when I was at CrossFit PB. Some of the personal training clients I had, I was coaching them in nutrition as well. And so I just continued to build on that and get more and more clients. And then when I went to Invictus, I was able to speak with CJ, the owner, and head coach of Invictus, and letting him know kind of what I did and how I worked with athletes. And at the time I was working with mostly, active populations and athletes, and just being able to let him know what I knew, what I do for myself, and how I can help athletes. That was so helpful because he was looking for something like that for his athletes at the time too, because there were coaches coming up in the sport, in the nutrition realm, right? There were definitely a few coming out that were geared more towards performance, not just body composition. And I believe 100% that he loved what he heard, and he loved that I practiced what I preached. And so that was wonderful for networking, because I got to work with some of the top CrossFit athletes in the world. And I probably didn't take quite as much of advantage of it at the time, but I was working as a nurse, right, at the time. When I went to Invictus Switch, I was a full-time nurse. So I was working 3 12-and-a-half-hour shifts a week, probably had about 20, nutrition clients. And then I was training, 5 days a week, doubles. And that was, so that was quite a lot. And so being able to work with many of those athletes, it was very helpful, because it just then referrals just continue to come in, right? And it just built my experience with more and more people. So the more people trust you and start to believe in what you're doing, that's so important. And when they see that the way you carry yourself and the way you practice what you're preaching, I think that makes you a much more credible source too, So that was a big piece of it. Mm-hmm.
One thing that I love that you just said, that I'm glad you said, because it has been a kind of a cornerstone of mine, is so that people can see that you practice what you preach. And I think that is something that's allowed me to be, have success with my coaching business, and clearly with you as well, because especially for now, you've become this strong, female force, and you can see that imagery from you. And I know there's, especially with younger girls coming into the sport and stuff like that, that it is like a pull towards you, because they can see that they would like to be like that too. And I just love that you are, because I know you, obviously I've known you for over almost a decade now, I guess, or maybe just over, that is true, and what they see is really who you are. And I think that that's really, really cool. And it's from my standpoint, I have just loved sitting back and watching you grow into being this badass games athlete, and just being stronger and stronger, and doing all these really cool things, because I remember those days, when you didn't have all this confidence and stuff like that. And it's just, I guess what I'm saying, I just love seeing it now and what you've been able to do with it. It's been so cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been wonderful in regards to helping other people, because, and it's not a business transaction for me. There's so many, and now I am seeing so much out there, and you guys can probably speak to this too. It's about business transactions, how many clients can you get, and how do you get this? And to me, it's maybe to a fault, it's never been about that for me. It's so important the way that I'm touching people and helping, like you said, the younger people coming up, even the women my own age who are whoa, I've never had someone like this, explain it to me or help me. And that's what it's been about for me, is showing that you don't have to continue following kind of what society has been telling us for so long. And it probably comes from my own struggles, right? And so it's been amazing to get to walk the walk and show people the way. And that's been so cool. You don't realize it when it's happening at the time, but looking back, and even now, it's really, it's great to get to do that, and to continue to want to do it for myself as changes happen.
What do you think like where you are right now, right? So like it's now, what is it? So one thing that's like really funny is I will like completely forget what time of the year it is, what season we're in. So I was like, okay, are we right after games? Are you in the middle of the season? So I was like looking at my calendar, like what fucking time of the year is it? So with you, where you're at right now, like take us through, if you care to share, like some of the things that you're doing right now that are helping you, one, I would imagine, prepare for an upcoming season, right? It's, what are we, like a month away, 2 months away?
I think the Open starts in like a month. Yeah.
Okay.
4 weeks, I think.
So like take us through some of the things you're doing right now, like maybe where your nutrition is or just what you're doing like right now to kind of prepare to get into the swing of things fully, like hardcore.
Yeah. So again, sleep is a huge part of it. Really focusing on that somewhere between 8 to 9 hours. So that's a big piece. In regards to nutrition, I try to keep my calories up there pretty high. People might be a little like, whoa, what the heck? I try to be eating somewhere around 2,600 to 3,000. There's times where I go well over that. And something that people will find interesting maybe is that I'm not, Aaron, you're so good at like, you're very good at, okay, here's my numbers for the most part, right? I am someone who gives myself a bit of a range because it works well for me. And remember, I've been doing this for a long time. So when I say, 2,600 to 3,000, sometimes over, maybe a little bit under, just depending. And people are like, well, Jen, that's super just random, right? So general. But at the same time, I've been doing this for a long time, and so I kind of know what my body needs during a specific time. So right now, that's sort of where I'm at, depending on the training sessions and where we are. Now, as we ramp up into preparing more for the Open and peaking, remember, it's not as much of a strength season. And so this is more of a high intensity part of the year. So I'm going it's very glycolytic. So I'm really utilizing, we're doing a lot more high intensity. I'm utilizing a lot more fuel, like carbohydrate, right? And so then I also need to be able to recover because I do need to keep my strength up. And so as I mentioned before, is that I still have to remember recovery, And so dieting and staying super lean isn't the focus right now at all. It really can't be. And so that's why I do follow a more high carbohydrate diet. And I also love more protein. So I'm a little bit higher protein and carb athlete. And then fats are going to be a good bit lower. So that's where I'm at right now in regards to nutrition. I definitely focus on food quality. However, with athletes, it's going to be a bit different than your, maybe just general population, health and longevity. Sometimes we've just got to get those calories in, and that's very apparent in, competition settings, right? This past weekend at like Wadapalooza, and even moving forward in the season, just depending. When I find that when the intensity really ramps up, the thought of food quality is just like, I cannot keep shoving these veggies in my mouth, or like just plain white rice is like very blah to me. So I will incorporate some, bagels, English muffins, I'm having like some soft shell tortillas, pretzels, different things that it doesn't always correlate with, health and longevity. Sometimes I'll have some cereal, and it's not what I would always suggest to everyone to always eat, but this time of year, it's certainly about remembering these next 6 to 8 months. It's a very long season, and you've got to be able to get that fuel in. And sometimes it has to happen quickly if you're doing 2-a-days, where your turnaround is 1.5 hours to 2 hours. And remember, food takes a little while to digest. So I'm focusing more this time of year on something quicker digesting in between. Whereas, the last 5 to 6 months, even if I was doing 2 sessions, intensity might be a little lower. I might go into the second session and the first hour to hour and a half is just strength work. So it's okay if the food sits a little longer, right? But now I'm kind of like, all right, what's kind of going to get at me quick, you know? So that's where my nutrition is at. I can stop there.
One thing there that one thing I wanted to say there too is, especially when you were talking about that range, for the listeners out there, like Jenn is not eating for body composition. That is a very big difference, right? She's like, oh, well, sometimes it's 2,600, sometimes it's way over 1,000. Like Jenn is eating to fuel performance, and that is the important distinction there. And also, you didn't say this, but I know it's something that we've talked, you and I have, you know, off air talked about in the past. Like in season, you've told me before that like you will have sometimes a problem with your keeping your weight up. Your weight will start to drop. So like your fuel, you have a unique problem that 99% of people listening to nutrition advice are not, you know, having themselves type of deal. So I just wanted to add that caveat because it's important that people understand that.
I had a really hard time going into the West Coast Classic last June and then leading into the games. I was around that, you know, that 3,000 calorie mark, and I had a hard time getting my weight up over 127 pounds. And, you know, and it's not because I'm just trying to do that. I think a lot of people are just like, oh, then I'm going to do what Jenn does. I was still losing, like maintaining that weight at 3,000 calories, 5'2", and a 41-year-old woman. Like that's not very normal. That is not normal at all. You know, and I'm going to put that out there. I understand that. But you also have to remember that I have worked on reversing myself and maintaining that since 2015. And I think that's an important distinction for women and men out there to know is I went through a time where I felt full. I was like, oh man, like I feel heavy. I'm so sick of stuffing myself, right? But performance in a sport is very different than just, you know, health and longevity and aesthetics. And now, you know, and for the past couple of years now, I've been reaping those benefits because I can actually lose 5 pounds in a week and a half at just 2,400 calories, 2,500 calories. And again, for some people that's normal. But for a 5'2", now 42-year-old female at my weight, that's very strange. And it's because my body has gotten so used to managing the weight I'm at. Plus I have a very high, for my size, my muscle mass is higher, right? But that was not always the case. I had to work on that, and I had to be okay with understanding that aesthetics was not always the goal. That doesn't mean I was like large, right? Remember I said my body weight's never gone over like 134, 135, but I did have to understand that it might take 2 or 3 years to get to that point. And then you have to like maintain and reverse it down, right? So that's such a key thing. And I think you guys talk about really focusing on that kind of thing too, is just understanding that it can take some time to get you where you want to be. Like these aren't always quick turnarounds. I went through periods of time where I was like, I don't want to take off my shirt. But again, remember, I just, you know, we all have these things about our body that we're like, you know, I want to look like that. But I stuck to the goal, right? I stuck to the plan. I questioned my coach sometimes because I would be like, but why don't I look like those other girls yet? Right? And it was because I didn't give my body time to build that muscle. I didn't give my body time to build that core, right? Like, sure, she could have dropped me down to like 1,500 or 1,600 calories, you know, training twice a day. And then what? Oh, that's great. You have sort of the body you want, but now great. See you later. You're never making it to the CrossFit Games, you know? So I think it's important to make note of that as well for both men and women that are listening, that I got to where I am because I believed in the process, and I was very uncomfortable for a long period of time. But I've reaped the rewards, you know, from doing that.
I think what you're trying to say, Jenn, is the grass is greener on the other side.
The grass is all, yeah.
And that sticking to something will reap you the reward.
And it might take
or whatever cliche there is for that.
It might take a year of you not being at the body composition you want. It might take 2 years. But at the end of the day, how long have people been trying to get to a body composition and not getting there because there's change? They're trying to like not follow a specific process like 10 times out of the year. Like every 2 months they're trying to go back and forth. And I 100% do not believe I'd be where I am if I had done that, you know?
It is interesting though, because you also do work with athletes, or I guess non-athletes, like people that just want to improve their body composition and aesthetics. And you send people to my general programs, which I of course super appreciate, but it's awesome that like you can use a lot of those principles that initially started in performance sport, and then as you've kind of continued your education and your journey into just broad fitness, that you've found success working with like body comp oriented people as well.
Cool. I know we are coming up on our time here, and I want to be respectful of that. So Jenn, is there anything else you would like to share before we kind of get into like wrap up stuff?
I'm trying to think. I don't know. I'm better at answering questions than
anything. That's perfectly fine. Anything else from you, Bryan?
No, talk about your business a little bit.
Yeah. And that was my next question. I was like, Jenn, please tell everyone where you can find you on Instagram. Yeah. And if you are accepting new clients, I don't want to send people a bunch. I don't want to like bombard you if you are completely capped or something like that. So, give us more there, please.
You can find me on Instagram at Jenn__Ryan. My nutrition coaching business is Lifeline Performance. I do work with many athletes, but the crazy thing is that's probably only about 25% of my client population. I have many people who are just looking to feel better, look better, learn a ton of new habits. And, you know, my combination of, you know, being a nurse since 2009 and a coach for so long has really come together after, especially the last year of working with someone named Travis Zipper on a integrative wellness and holistic health coaching certification. So that has really brought everything together for me. And it's really, really rewarding when I can do the things outside of the hospital that I want to be doing with the patients in there. And it's just married everything together for me. So that's really the passion that I have right now, and the route that my coaching is going.
Super cool.
I love that. For any of the listeners out there listening, if for what it's worth, I 100% co-sign Jenn. Jenn is who I go to with like things when I don't know. So Jenn is a fantastic coach. I would recommend her for anyone. Anything else, Bryan?
No, it was great catching up with you. I'm really glad that we're all in a position to be able to get together and talk publicly like this. Super cool.
Yes, Jenn, this was absolutely fantastic. I'm sure we'll have you on again in the future. We'll talk something else. Maybe we'll dive deep on something. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your friendship to both of you guys and everyone on the podcast listening. Bryan and I will talk to you next week.